Prospects of shoring up Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac may be calming the markets, but it's having the opposite effect on Capitol Hill. Some are getting worried that the cost of helping Fannie and Freddie will be for taxpayers on their back. My next guest says we should simply slow down on this. Minority Whip Congressman Roy Blunt of Missouri joins me now. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey, Stuart, nice to be with you.
Now, you want action on housing. I've heard you say this. But you don't like the Treasury's plan for dealing and backing up the housing agencies. What don't you like about the Treasury's plan?
You know, I like quite a bit about the Treasury plan. What I think is we don't need to combine it with this huge housing bill that does everything from turn local governments into purchasers of standalone single-family housing, which they're not very good at managing. As a matter of fact, nobody's probably worse at managing standalone single-family housing than local government is, or the bailout that is, I think, excessive, or the annual fund that we would divide up into an authorized perpetual housing fund that the Secretary of HUD and the Secretary of the Treasury just distribute every year, and that fund's paid for by a new tax that the GSEs would have to provide. So, you know, to say that these people are poor enough they need a bailout and rich enough they can handle an additional tax seems to me to be not the package we could put together.
Congressman, you're opposed generally to the terms of the $300 billion bailout that the senators agreed to, but generally speaking, you are in favor of the Treasury's plan to backstop Freddie and Fannie. I got it right?
Generally, I'm in favor of GSE reform. The Treasury plan with as much as you can put in it to have a regulator that has the potential to see that this doesn't happen again. A regulator that can go in and see where Freddie and Fannie are in their essentially their hedge fund, their portfolio management. Be sure this doesn't happen again. Don't exacerbate this by saying, okay, it is in fact true that the full faith and credit of the federal government is there, and so you can loan money as cheaply as you want, and then they can go into the marketplace in any way they want. I think we can come out of this with some really good results, but we don't need to rush through this in the next 48 hours, the next week. As long as we get this done by the time we leave here 15 days from now, I think the markets are secure, Freddie and Fannie are secure, and we move into the future without creating lots of new problems.
Do we need this taxpayer backup? Fannie and Freddie could raise fresh capital from, for example, sovereign wealth funds, or they could have a rights issue to bring in more money from existing shareholders. Do they absolutely have to have taxpayer money?
I don't know if they'll have to have taxpayer money, even if you give them the taxpayer backup. I'm hoping that if you do this, that you'd never have to use it, and the fact that it's there means you wouldn't have to use it. But I'd really like to see this combined with a strong regulator that, if necessary, could always come back in and say, look, you haven't met the obligations you needed on capitalization requirements. You've been too aggressively out there investing your money and essentially creating a hedge fund with the cushion you have. And we're, in fact, not going to let this happen again. Somebody's going to come in as a strong regulator with the potential always of receivership out there as what could happen. If we do that, I think you probably never get to the taxpayer money. And also, another thing you're doing here is we're proposing that these agencies that have now become too big to fail, with 50% of all the mortgages involved in these two agencies one way or another, would even have higher loan limits that would help places like San Francisco and Boston, but wouldn't help most of the rest of the country.
Last one real fast, Congressman. Can you cut off the political connection?
I think that who's on the board and how the board functions is important, and I would hope that the regulator would have the capacity to go in and look at the board, see who needs to be added to that board to make the board truly both independent but also protecting the stockholders and the taxpayers of the company. And if there's anybody that's going to take a bath here, it should be the people that have managed Fannie and Freddie into this situation. But I don't think anybody has to take that bath. I think we ought to be sure we get the most out of this moment we can to secure these organizations for the future.
Minority Whip Congressman Roy Blunt, thanks for joining us, sir.
You bet.
Former Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros. He knows a thing about Fannie and Freddie and housing and